Hello and welcome to episode 2, Unearthing the Creative Pulse in our East London Olympic Boroughs. This podcast is brought to you with the support from University College London and is co-produced between Dr. Anne Preston and Liza Fletcher, with studio production by Robin Billingham. Episode 2, Empowering Creative Talent in our Olympic Boroughs. In episode 2, we hear from initiatives and organisations dedicated to nurturing and retaining creative talent in East London's Olympic Boroughs. From skills development programmes to access to affordable workspaces and support for emerging entrepreneurs, we explore the ecosystem that fastens innovation and growth to the region. But before we start exploring exactly what this means, I would like to ask each participant to introduce themselves and say a little about their organisation and role. So over to Lucy Ferguson from Mediarite.
Hi, I'm Lucy. I am the founder and CEO of Mediarite. We're a social enterprise video production company based in Dalston. And broadly, we sell video, animation and photography services to clients whilst running free training and work experience for young people that want to get into work. And our promise is that we'll create paid work for the young people we've trained on the jobs we do for our clients.
Thank you, Lucy. Next on the list is Philip Osei-Hwere from Eagle Agency.
Hi, everybody. My name is Philip Osei-Hwere. I'm the co-founder of Eagle London Agency, founded in 2004. We're a full-fledged agency specializing in communications, marketing, and tech. We have creative production as one of our main lines of interest. What we do is we help young people get into the career ladder by getting involved in media stuff, working on mainstream projects, and then as a result, they move on into other mainstream agency and pick up their careers from there. So that's what we've been doing for the past 21 years. Yeah.
Amazing, 21 years. And last but not least, J.R. Josephs from Salute.
Good afternoon. My name is J.R. Josephs. I work at a creative charity called Salute. We work with young people up to the age of 25 years old from marginalised backgrounds, providing them with creative learning in music, multimedia and fashion. We also do a lot of mentoring, and we've been going for 6 years, supporting over 600 young people. Amazing.
So let's get on to the first subject then, empowering creative talent in our Olympic boroughs. So in this series, we're looking at the creative landscape, the creative ecosystem, and we're keen to hear about how the cultural landscape within your borough or the area that you work in, and the evolution that's taken place since the 2012 Olympics. In the first episode that we did, we looked at the legacy and we looked at creating new audiences and what that meant for our Olympic boroughs. We know that recent research from a company called Elevate interviewed young people in Hackney, Newham, Tower Hamlets and Waltham Forest and believes that the Games really benefited their community. I think over 55% of young people agreed with this. More than 1 in 3 were neutral or didn't know. But I think a lot of people positively rate that there's more cultural diversity, green spaces, accessibility, and 53% of young people in the Elevate research really feel that they're part of the local community. And I'm just wondering, I'm going to come on to Philip first, actually. Philip, what's been your sense of change since 2012? I mean, it's amazing that you've been working for 21 years and developing talent. Does this fit in with what you've seen? Would you agree?
I mean, it's interesting because I would say the biggest legacy of the Olympics in the East End is bringing the spotlight onto East End. And I think that is what is now inspiring the young people in this in these boroughs to really see how they can tap into all these opportunities. I mean, we know the East End has always been known as a deprived part of London, and having these Olympics happening in this borough, and then seeing what's even happening after the Olympics with all the development that's going on around it, if it doesn't give anybody that thing to aspire to be part of this, then I don't know what else. So I think that's what I'm seeing, and I'm also seeing that now. It's also bringing together different cultures. I mean, you take a walk down Stratford, we're in the town hall. So we've seen the transformation. When we take a walk down the old Stratford market, you can actually see the local community. And then when you cross over into Westfield, you can see even a bigger, diverse community. And you can really see the rich blend of this local and this new community sort of coming together. I think we'll probably discuss it later on. Some of the little fears is how far do we go in all this development, and how do we then make sure that the locals who are excited about this new communities coming in still feel relevant in this whole scheme of things. So I think that's what I've seen. But for me, as an agency that's been running since 2004, and especially the reason why we set ourselves up was to ensure that we had inclusive voices and brands and agents understood how to speak to minority communities. But then seeing what's happening around here, where there's always an inclusion in terms of making sure that all voices are heard in every discussion that's being done through the council, through the various organizations, I think we're seeing a lot of growth in this area. And yes, we just need to keep pushing to make sure that, yes, the local community benefit from this whole experience. And
Yeah, definitely. We've seen regeneration, we've seen green growth, we've seen job creation, but is it for local people? Are they taking everyone with them? Yeah. I mean, on the same sort of subject and the same Elevate survey, some young people were, there's widespread concerns about crime, gang violence, mental health challenges, and they focused on the 16 to 24-year-olds. But in line with what you said, Philip, 65% of young people in this survey expressed optimism about their future prospects. And there is hope that, East London eventually will become a safer, more inclusive community where young people can thrive. And that brings me on very nicely to the work of Salute that JR is involved with, because before the recording of the podcast, JR was talking about young people who are already organised and sorted in terms that they're registered in formal education and learning. But how do you feel about this optimism? Are you hopeful that regeneration has meant that people are going on and acquiring the skills so that they can go on to employment? And how does your organisation work with those young people who might not quite hit the mark, and the preparation work that you do with them to prepare them?
It's an interesting one. I think I'm torn between the legacy of the Olympics. I think I grew up in East London. I remember the old Stratford Centre. I remember where it used to look like and feel like, and it's still very similar now. But then we see like Westfield come up, we see the regeneration of the area. Are all local people benefiting from that? I don't believe so. But I feel like we do need organisations like Salute, like your two organisations as well, that are providing opportunities and making young people feel like they can be a part of this new community, this new East London, this new Stratford. I think I just don't think that there's enough integration. I don't think they've done enough. But the legacy of that is Westfield funding projects that we've done that then does tick those boxes. We work very closely with a lot of young people in these Olympic boroughs and in the youth centres and so forth, and not just the schools. And if you ask them, for the ones that we speak with, if you ask them, can they become something? A lot of them will tell you no, because of where they come from, because of their upbringing, because of their surroundings. And that's not just based on education. That's just based on like geographic location. That's sad, because even when you can highlight like very successful musicians, actors, sports people that have come from these areas, they don't care. There's like, yeah, that's just like a one-off. That doesn't happen to everybody. So I think they need people like us. I think they need people like myself. I have dyslexia and dyspraxia. I still achieved some amazing things. I'm wearing a tracksuit now, and I've gone into like super corporate buildings wearing a tracksuit because I believe that we must represent ourselves, and I'm so for that. I represent the young people that I was one of them once, and I still remember my childhood very, very vividly. So I think the glimmer of hope comes from the social entrepreneurs and people that are running these types of organisations. I don't think it's coming from, I hope it's not coming from Westfield being built, because you build a Westfield and then they're governing young people going through there, break up if you're in a big group, don't wear your hoods, like, you know, like, you've built this luxury place, but now there's terms and conditions for a certain demographic of people that want to go into these spaces. So it's not for them. They're not feeling as welcome as everybody else, and how everyone should be feeling from these opportunities that are being presented. But yeah, I think there's more work that needs to be done. But I'm not against the regeneration. I just think that there needs to be a bigger consideration on how it works for everybody. But also, with that said, they're not building these spaces and not creating these spaces with that in mind, because some people just don't know, right? They don't come from these backgrounds. They've got a job to build or create these projects and so forth and bring the Olympics to East London. They don't know the depth of what's needed and what's required. So they need people like us that understand the need and the requirement, and then working together. And as I was saying to Lucy before, I'm all about collaboration. We work with collaborate with super corporate organisations in the UK to very local grassroots organisations, and we're just trying to bridge the gap and making sure that young people from these communities can meet these opportunities.
It's really interesting that you use the phrase bridging the gap, because listening to Philip and yourself, JR, we're about to come on to Lucy and find out about her organisation and how it absolutely does bridge the gap. I think there's a very important role that's played by community organisations, the social enterprises, the CICs, charity workers, and the partnerships with the organisations. And actually, Bridging the Gap is a lovely introduction to the very interesting model for the work that Mediarite does. So, Lucy, reflecting on the legacy of the 2012 Olympics and regeneration, because of course your organisation is based in Hackney, I'm asking you to reflect on, you know, the impact that it's had on the development of skills and workforce, but also on how Mediarite bridges the gap. And you've got a very interesting model of how you work between communities and corporates.
So, to start with how the Olympics have affected Hackney, I started Mediarite just before the Olympics. So I got to see a lot of investment going in. And at the point in time where it was 2012, for instance, the BBC were running a programme which was super interesting, based in the Hackney Picture House. And we were lucky enough to be a community partner in that. So that was incredible in that moment of time. I think there was a lot of hope, and there was an understanding within the young people that I was working with that they were somewhere cool, that they were somewhere interesting, that people were interested in where they were from. And I think that the Olympics were broadly fantastic. They regenerated this whole area. I'm not entirely sure, exactly as JR said, what happened after that. So geographically speaking, where Here East is, for instance, which is lots of creative businesses, quite a lot of innovative businesses, now the V&A are there, etc. It's quite difficult to get young people from Hackney. There's a bunch of physical barriers. For instance, there's a canal, there's the motorway. There's lots of youth centres around there. Not that we do tons of work in youth centres anymore, just because the kids there are typically quite young, and we've ended up focusing on getting people into work. But you've got all these physical barriers as to why those young people don't just walk across the road and then go into Here East and take part in all the activities that might be on there. And I think that's the bit where it's become complicated. You've got these huge cultural institutions that have a remit to work with the local community. The local community are there. There are bits and bobs of programmes, but I think it's really important that community-led organisations, exactly as you say, bridge the gap, because with the best will in the world, those big cultural institutions, they put together strategically led programmes, and they'll go and do their delivery, and they'll try and reach numbers of people and spread it around. But there's a bit that needs to be done where organisations escort the young people to the locations, spend a bit more time explaining, act as a buffer between those two, maybe whether it's between schools or groups of young people that are being developed in the community and those big cultural organisations or big creative agencies, etc. It's not so simple that it's just a lack of opportunities or that nobody's put any communication out that there's stuff going on. There's all sorts of reasons why the local young people don't turn up, or they don't realise there's jobs there, or they don't take themselves there because they've never been there before and no one's ever explained to them why it would be interesting and fun and why it's for them. And also often when you take groups of young people there, they do look different to the other people that are hanging around those creative spaces, or the V&A, for instance, whether that's in terms of age or ethnicity or whatever it is, in terms of wearing tracksuits. And I think with the best will in the world, there's a really important role of kind of escorting those young people, explaining what the opportunity is, and holding those larger organisations to account for making some of those opportunities genuine and meaningful. And I think there are lots of opportunities, there's lots of noise, there's lots of conversations, etc. And we got funded by Westfield too, so there is some sort of really excellent, genuine intent to do that. I think it's sort of sometimes undervalued exactly how much organisations like us do to explain to young people that this is a career they could have, and this is something that could benefit them. And if they just turned up, and if they kept going, and if they didn't let the fact that they feel uncomfortable in certain situations put them off, then there are all these things going on. So that's my kind of hope. I suppose how we've directly benefited is, for instance, UCL are a client of ours, so they use us regularly for video and photography services, and we book young people that we've developed on some of those photography jobs. So things like that that's one relationship that we've got that's quite deep. That sort of stuff works. It's like, it's not just, we're going to put on a day where you can come and have a look around. We're going to try and use you. We're going to try and support you. We're going to prioritise using you over other marketing services that we could buy because you're working with young people. And I think that's a good example, I suppose, that directly relates to the Olympic Boroughs, of how we've managed to develop a client relationship that has led to loads of young people. I'd say like 7 or 8 different young people that have come through a training programme in the past have come and taken photographs here in Here East or on this campus, or filmed things around UCL exhibitions, curated exhibitions, and gone to different spaces. So I think you do need that, and I hope that organisations like the V&A and some of the other big cultural and creative institutions that are moving in also do the same thing.
Yeah, and Dr. Anne Preston would normally come in at this point and talk about the UCL initiatives and her role as community engagement for School of Culture and Creative Industries. She can't be with us today, but from my knowledge, yes, working with Mediarite and agencies that employ and develop local talent and engage with young people from the Olympic boroughs that normally are underrepresented in creative and cultural life. It's one thing they do. And the representation aspect is really interesting because, JR, you were talking about, you know, young people don't feel that they're representative in creative industries, and Lucy commented as well that people look and dress excuse me, people look and dress differently in those creative industries. But JR, you've come from a background where you made it, you worked in music, performance and production. So what is it now with all the training schemes and work placements, work experience and programs for them by all the organisations that are represented around this table today? What is it that's holding people who live in Newham or Hackney or Tower Hamlets for thinking that that's for them and they could choose to go down that creative career path?
So the question is, what's holding them back from those opportunities? I think knowing about it. We've done there was a couple of years ago when we never had a studio and we never had a space, and so we was actively trying to work with youth centres, and this was more so for the ones in Tower Hamlets. But again, like Newham, they closed down so many, I think like 18 youth centres in like the last 10 years. So, and that's part of the legacy of the Olympics, you know, like closing down youth centres. So, but in Tower Hamlets, when we went and spoke to these youth centres, saying no names, they always told us that they struggle to like reach young people, found them hard to reach. Mm-hmm. But they're hard to reach if you're sitting at your desk and they're outside. That's, of course, they're going to be hard. Anybody be hard to reach because you don't have a direct contact number for them. They don't know that what you have to provide. Then also, so I think they lack in terms of going out and going directly to them, meeting them, doing outreach, going into schools and letting them know about the services that is available, which is what we do. They and then some of them, they would, because we're predominantly a music charity. Some of them was like, yeah, we've got a music studio, but, you know, they don't want to come in here and use the studio. And when I asked to see their studio spaces, like, that's not, like, who would want to use that space? You know, it's like the equipment is very dated. Like, some of the equipment looked like from when I was going to a youth centre. That's over 20 years ago. It's very dated. It's very run down. Like, there's chips and tears in the walls and, you know, versus our studio spaces, we've always tried to maintain a high-end studio. We work with some like industry professionals as well that the young people know about. So when the young people, so we've got really like top-tier equipment, right? And sometimes the parents or the teachers will come into our space and be like, you sure that they can like play the guitars and like these headphones are really expensive headphones? They're like, are you sure they can use this? And they've got their drinks right next to the MacBook laptops that they're working on. They're like, yeah, 100%. To this day, touch wood, we've never had any issue. Nothing's been broken, nothing's been stolen, not from any young people that's come and used it. Maybe from our staff, yeah, but not from the young people that come and use it. Why? Because when they come into our space, they appreciate that they get access to these types of facilities. So, and one thing is for certain is, if they got it once, they're going to want it again. So they're very respectful, they're very mindful, they're very careful, patient, and they're there to learn and absorb all the information that we're prepared to give, that we can possibly give them. And then from there, we can teach them how to take that into other environments, into school, into college, into work. Like, if you can turn up to our sessions 15 minutes early, then do it at school. And we've had the schools call us and be like, I don't know what you said to this child, but they're coming in on days that they would never normally come. They're not even expected to come in on these days, but they're like, yeah, I just want to come in because I want more time at Salute, or they've taught me at Salute that, you know, I can go further in life if I apply my... Also thinking like, what conversations are they having with them also, right? But I think this is why it is, again, we're not bound by the governments or the legal way of teaching, you know, so we can have very honest and open conversations with them. We can push them, and I think they really appreciate that. We've had some sessions when the carer or the teacher's been in the session, and like we've had a really deep conversation with the young people, and the teacher's there like nodding their heads like, yeah, like please keep talking, you know. It's like, because they can't have those conversations because there's constraints around what they can talk about and how they can talk and so forth. But we've walked their life, you know, we've walked their path, and we're very relatable. We've got lived experience. I really understand when they talk to us and talk to me that what they're going through, because I went through it as well. You know, it's just sad that it's still happening to today. So I think it's about going directly to them. I think it's about actually hearing them out. When I started Salute, I thought I wanted to look after, like cater for my younger self. I realised that my younger self is drifting off a little bit. But hearing what they want, hearing what they need, and then all of our programs are co-designed by the young people, so it resonates with them. Versus like me and these people in our 20s, 30s, 40s sitting down and be like, yeah, we should do this and make them do it. No, it's not interesting for them. Let them design it, and then we can shape it up a little bit more so that it resonates with them. I think that's the important thing, is giving them what they need and want.
Yeah, I think the collaboration point is really important, and Philip's nodding his head here. And I think that you know, there's two opportunities that have just come up in the Lucy and JR speaking. It's those East Bank partners being aware of the opportunities that people need. Your local youth club is never going to have the cash to have a podcast studio, a recording studio. I've been into colleges that had a TV studio. Well, you know, I used to work in broadcasting, and I can tell you that, you know, year by year basis, technology improves, and, you know, it was just out of date. So there are opportunities for the East Bank partners and the way that they allow in communities to use their spaces, but in a different way to the way that audiences have traditionally used the spaces. But I'm interested in this collaboration angle, and I know that, Philip, this is the way that your organisation works. So I'm wondering if you could reflect on collaboration with communities and what East Bank partners and the Olympic partners, UCL, UAL, BBC, Sadler's Wells, V&A, can learn from the way that our grassroots organisations work.
I mean, I've just been listening to Lucy and Jay, and I'm thinking, spot on with all that you guys are talking about. I always say to organisations when I meet them that it's about visibility. Now, big organisations think they are very visible, but unfortunately they are invisible to the local communities, because one, they create this big barrier in terms of facade. Now, if I'm walking even into UCL and I'm from the local community, not had any educational background, the name UCL even intimidates me. So saying to me to come into UCL to engage from whatever level of a community organization leader that you are, depending on your background, you won't engage. But sitting around the table having a podcast in the UCL facility, if I was a young person, that would boost my confidence. Suddenly I've come into the premise that actually it's not as bad as I thought. So this is where we're talking about collaboration. How are we reaching out? And that's why organizations like Lucy, like Jeff, is so critical, because they are the face of the community. And you can't engage the community if you don't know who the influencers are. And I think sometimes what these organizations are, because of all the bureaucracies and stuff that they have in their structures, they think they're looking down in the grassroots, but they're really not looking anywhere near the grassroots. And how do we then engage? So some of the encouragement I also give to local organizations, even when I'm having conversations with the council and the Chamber of Commerce, how do we also profile these local organizations so they are also visible when it comes to the big, but definitely, like you said, collaboration is the way out. With all these big names coming into this area, making this area look big, if no local person can identify with what's happening here, then we might as well have been somewhere else. Because I think the whole essence of we all being excited for seeing all these organizations, we want to partake in this great new system or new phase that East London has enjoyed, and also we want to see us being celebrated by them. We don't want to push ourselves to celebrate. We feel that, if you've come into our environment, in our communities, you understand us, you celebrate us, and you give us opportunities. And that's the only way that others that are coming up and looking and thinking, can I be part of this? Can then say, yes, I can, because I can see Gerard there, I can see Lucy there, I can see people that I know who were in the same spaces like myself, now transitioning and being part of it. And then they become the ones that would help us into these organizations. So, yes, I really feel, and as a business, that's how we've always grown, especially with the area that we specialize in, trying to say to brands, how do you become culturally competent and credible? How do you speak to diverse communities and things? I know it's a sensitive conversation to have, but the thing is, we're in a space where your audience, we keep saying that we're leaving money on the table if you're not engaging beyond your normal audience. And we can see what COVID did. Open the online streams, products coming from all over the world. And suddenly, mainstream brands are feeling the competition, thinking, okay, what's going on here? So this, yes, collaboration, like you said, it's so critical in this new ecosystem that we find ourselves in. Yeah.
It's so funny, Philip, because if I were to write a script for this podcast today, you're feeding me all the best lines to lead on to the next subject, and you're talking about difficult conversations here, and I think there are some difficult conversations to be had. Yes, about audiences, yes, about mainstream broadcasting production, because traditionally a university like UCL would have prepared young people for their career. They would have gone out into the world. Now, our collaborative and community-minded grassroots organisations that we all work in our own communities teach the skills that people need: broadcasting, performing arts, communication skills, filmmaking, and the list is endless. But I suppose, since COVID, media has been democratised. So, yes, you can learn all the skills that can get you a job in the BBC. Do you want to work in the BBC? Do you want to create that content when you know that going into the community, there's 10 different stories that are really meaningful to the community that live there, and you want to produce content like that? Again, with skills, and you know this from working collaboratively as well, Philip, that we can prepare young people for skills, but I'm reflecting on the economic climate at the moment. I mean, you only have to look at the media press, LinkedIn, national news. Times are tough. Economically, I feel a responsibility for preparing young people in all the skills they need, saying you have to be robust, you have to get to learn to hear the word no, you have to drop everything to work on a freelance basis. But I don't know if I want to do that for young people at the moment, because I kind of want to say to them, watch what you're doing, and maybe, get a job in an organisation for a couple of years and learn your trade before you go and work freelance. And I know it's something that I've asked you all to reflect on, about our economy, about the future sustainability for jobs, and the possibility for young people to create their own creative entrepreneurship projects, and maybe set up their own CIC. I mean, it is a tough conversation, isn't it, Lucy? Because, we all fear we're all experiencing the difficulty in funding, money being withdrawn from core services. Did you want to share any of your reflections on that with us?
Yeah, I mean, I think that to a certain extent, the mainstream creative industry is in crisis. So one of your earlier questions was what's holding young people back locally from their creative career? And the answer for the 18 to 25-year-olds I work with is that there isn't very much work. They're dealing with these huge established media companies, whether that's post-production houses that are going bust or the TV channels that used to commission smaller production companies not commissioning any TV. There's this terrifying study that says that 70% of freelancers from the TV sector are currently unemployed. And so that means that you've got this kind of the establishments in crisis at a point where young people are coming out of training programs. In our case, we try not to work with young people with degrees. Occasionally, someone will sneak on with a degree. But broadly speaking, we're looking to work with diverse young people with barriers to work who aren't degree educated and who are not in education, employment and training. When they've completed our Work Ready training programme, we need to look for work experience for them and then get them into work. And just like you, I think I completely agree. A couple of years with some stability, learning how to be managed, learning how to do as you're told, as well as being creative and brilliant, is really helpful before you then look at freelancing, which can be really complicated in terms of who's doing your tax return. You don't want the government to come after you and not say that you didn't understand what freelancing means. And I think that that's the bit that's really complicated at the moment. I think all those mainstream organisations that we're speaking to, whether that's TV production companies, broadcasters, or creative agencies, I think that are struggling, creates an opportunity. So on the hopeful side of things, I think the opportunity is that there's young people in my office, because we also very deliberately employ young people. So half of our staff are under 25, incredibly entrepreneurial, multi-skilled. They don't just edit. There's no more job roles. You're not just an editor anymore. You're a digital content producer and you can shoot, you can edit. You might even be in front of camera. That there is this amazing opportunity for young people with that entrepreneurial mindset who can get over the fact that whatever it was that they were told or imagined they might be doing is disappearing into thin air to a certain extent. But what is being created are this disruption creates all sorts of gaps that if you're clever, smart and fast, you can move into. And arguably speaking, the young people that we've got in our office are probably more competent at running the business at this exact moment of time than I would be, because things are shifting so quickly. Brands and companies are expecting so much more from their media spend that actually this digital native mindset where you're not going to wait for anyone else, you're going to pick up all the skills and do it yourself is hope for the future, but everything needs to be balanced, doesn't it? So these big organisations are pulling up the drawbridge and going into crisis just at the point where these young people really want some stability and want to be paid reasonably. But at the same time, there's lots of established creatives who are losing their jobs and struggling. So I think the pathway, again, I don't know exactly what the pathway is, but I do know that it's got to balance itself out, and that wherever there's crisis, there's also opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned graduates, because here we are, within the UCL podcast studio. And I'm sure that all of the lecturers and the people who support students in this university, do feel a sense of responsibility as well, because When I produce the Future Film Focus events, which are careers conventions where it's part exhibition, part panel talks, but I know in the past your organisation has actually employed young people on the strength
Yes.
of meeting them at a Future Film Focus event. We do get graduates, and these are graduates who've gone into 50K's worth of debt to study media, to study film, to study creative content producing skills, and yet they're at home with the parents working as a barista, or not saying there's anything wrong in that, but it's not the career they envisaged. So I think there's a lot of thinking about the future, sustainable future, but also, you know, as you say, the mainstream companies may be pulling up the drawbridge, but does that mean like smaller organisations like ourselves are filling in the gaps, bridging the gaps, again, in this creative industries ecosystem by creating smaller opportunities for them? And maybe, you know, it's like you said, it's like these creative entrepreneurs, they are presenters, editors, camera operators, they can do everything, but they don't have to do one job at once, all at the same time. Is it a big question to ask you to reflect on that, JR? Or do you want to just take one piece from the point of view of Salute and think about, you know, the mindsets of young people when they've gone through your programmes? Have they got the confidence or ambition to plan for a future, or is there still a lot of insecurity about the future?
I think definitely a lot of insecurity about the future. I think that's understandable. A lot of them have dreams. I always tell people to dream. I'm sitting here now because I had a dream. But I think it's understandable because a lot of them are going into spaces that they've never been in before. But they have ambition. That's one thing that's not missing, you know. Whether or not they believe that they can get there, that's a different thing. But I think from like my background, where I've come from, to even be sitting here today is a massive achievement. A lot of people wouldn't even think that we could get here. We're having conversations with some organisations that people wouldn't even dare to even knock on the door, you know. And I don't think everyone is made to be an entrepreneur. Not everyone's made to be a freelancer. Some people need to like work in, have that 9 to 5, that security, because that's the way that they're set up. So, for instance, we've got this young boy. He started off as a trainee from Newham College. He's now doing an apprenticeship with us. On his first day, he started with these 2 other students. On their first day, I asked them, like, who wants to run their own business? And 2 of them put out their hand. And I was like, what about you? He's like, no, I just want to work for a company. We do work with Canary Wharf, and just coming up to the end of his traineeship, I asked him if he wanted to go and apply for an IT apprenticeship with Canary Wharf. He said, nah, I just want to stay at Salute. I just want to stay with Salute and work my way up. There's people like that, and we need people like that in order, because, listen, I'm all for entrepreneurship, and I've helped more entrepreneurs than I've helped people get into employment over the 6 years. But if we don't have people that are working for the organisation, how do you build an organisation, you know? So you need it. I think for whatever avenue that they want to go down, I think it's very important that they feel supported and they have the tools in order to explore that opportunity to its fullest. So I think that's where we also play a major part in making sure that. So I'm a qualified life coach. So when they come and they've got these ideas, it's very easy for me to help them to structure out a pathway for them into making that work best for them. But again, like we work with a development company, they love the work that we do. They wish that they could do more, but they didn't go and get their degree to go and do youth programs. But they care about it, but that's not what they didn't apply for that job to do youth programs. They've applied for that job to do development programs. So their logic is, let's work with the organisations and the people that are set up to help and to do those things, and then together we can make that impact. I think that's how we work, and collaboration again, that's how it works, and that's how we can support them to achieve their dreams, whatever their dreams are. But I don't think everyone should be an entrepreneur. I don't think everyone should be an employee. Like, what works best for them, and they should just feel supported.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And in our mainstream media and in a sort of like, if you want, I'm putting this into inverted commas, a capitalist society, you know, it is a dream to own your own business and pour all your profits into your own company. But there are people who don't want to be like that. Not everyone can do public speaking, raise finance for their company, and you know, be a sort of superstar figure in their community. So I don't know where to go from here, actually, then, Philip. So,
I actually wanted to just...
so I'm thinking about the future and where, you know, JR's comments naturally lead on.
You know, because I was going to say that you mentioned about small organizations like us taking over the baton and now being the support for these young people as they are looking to get on the career path. And I'm saying that organizations like us give better clarity. If a young person comes into my organization, because he sees the whole organization structure from top to bottom, he can straight away know, is this for me or is this not for me? So I've had a lot of young people come in, some of them work with me for 3 years, and at the end of 3 years, you know what, I don't think this marketing thing is for me, because they've been through every system, right from me going out with them pitching, through today themselves writing their own presentation, standing in front, you know. So my encouragement always to big agencies and things like, you need to lean into small agencies like us. One, for partnerships, because you have the right quality team, like Lucy just mentioned. You've got people that are very motivated, very inspired, very, you know, excited about what they do, and they always want to give their best. You know, they understand, like Jeremy mentioned, they understand the opportunity that's been given to them, and they want to make sure that they give their best out of it. So coming into small agencies, that's some of the benefits you get. You also, it means that you also don't need that overhead cost. Why are some of these big production houses going down? Because their overhead costs are so expensive, you know. Like you say, one person comes in for a role and that's all they do. So if they need 6, 7, 8 different roles, you have 8, you know. But then when you come into these small, we're able to manage smaller teams, more efficient, more effective, and we understand the client's need and we would deliver to that spec. So I'm just trying to say that, yes, we may be seeing the big agencies and the big production houses struggling and shutting up, but there's still a lot of opportunity down here in these community organizations. And on top of that, very talented young people. You know, we're talking about content these days, and I think since COVID, everybody's become a content creator. You know, and you see the amazing content that's being pushed out there, even though sometimes I look back and think, wow, we're an agency, but some of these content by these so-called non-professionals, I mean, right from the creative brief to execution to filming and all that, and it's just amazing, you know. And I'm just asking myself, how are we tapping into these young talent? Now, I agree that the most important thing that these young talent need is discipline. And I think that's where JR and Lucy, you guys are doing great work, because if they don't understand life in its realness, then that's where, because of what social media is feeding onto them, of life being this polished facade, then they all go out into the world expecting that I walk into a job, I become a producer next day, I become the director next day, I become manager. You know, within 24 days, they're up to CEO level. You know, that's what. And so I really respect like the work that Jerry, you guys do, because you sort of bring reality to these young people for them to understand that life is just not for the taking, as it's been made for us to feel, but we've got to work at it. Now, I know we're not supposed to work hard, work smart, and all that, and I think sometimes these statements is taken out of context. And there are some young people who then think, I don't want to work smart, not work hard, and then whatever that interpretation means is work smart. I never know what that means, but I say to the young people, I say, just as you can never shorten the pregnancy cycle of a woman from 9 months to 1 month. It means the life in its norm has to go through some structure. And it's about going through that structure, understanding what it takes. You can't graduate by coming to university for one day. You've got to go through a 4-year program. If you're going on an apprenticeship course, you can't complete that apprenticeship. So it's about getting the young people to understand that this is the structure for life, because I feel that sometimes that's what then creates all the stress that they get themselves in, all the mental health and all the hassles that some of them find themselves in, because they are over expecting life to be in a way that it's not real. But obviously we as employees, we are far from it. People like yourselves who are closer to them are able to get them to listen, this is not a 24-hour situation here. We're going on a journey. You know, I said, we're going on a journey. And as we're going on a journey, we're going to learn a lot of stuff. We're going to let go of stuff. We're going to embrace some stuff. And then at the end of the journey, we'll reflect and then ask ourselves, what do we take on to our next destination? And I think that's where we always come from in that conversation. Yeah, so, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Philip. I mean, you know, when you go to school, you go from year 1 to year 2, year 3, you graduate and you know where you're going to be next year. But when you enter the world of work, unless you're in, a designed program and work situation, the type of environment that JR and Lucy provide for young people, you know that you could stay in the same job for years. You know, there's no guaranteed or immediate progression. It's up to you. And I think that's where your life coaching comes in, JR, doesn't it? Because it's good to have expectations, manage your expectations, and build on the skills that you have in order to realise, succeed, or slightly adjust your expectations and go on to the next thing.
So can I just say?
Yeah, please do.
For clarity,
I
actually believe in work smart, not hard. And I truly believe that you can achieve anything that you want. But it's working towards it. And understand, like, Rome weren't built in a day. You wouldn't. I always break down, like, how do you build a block of flats? You don't go in on the first day. Actually, what you do is you go and you scope out the land. That'll probably be your research. And the first thing that they do is dig down. You know, so maybe stripping back some things that you've built up over the years, and then you lay the foundation, then the structure, then the floor. So I do it, take them on that journey. So it's not going to happen in 20. You're not going to be CEO in 24 hours. And actually, you need to wear all the hats, all the business hats. You need to do all the roles and whether it's the admin, social media, the filming, the editing, and you have to do all of these different areas in order so that when you take that hat off and pass it to the next person, you know what that should really look like, and you know what you're asking somebody else to do because you've experienced it yourself. But I'm here because I had a manifestation many, many years ago that I would sit in a space like this and I would be doing the work that I am with young people, and here I am doing it. So I believe that it's possible, but it's not easy. But if you work smart and not hard, and when I say not hard is don't like bust your brains, understand where your strengths are. They're cool, they're good, they're taken care of. But more importantly, where's your weaknesses? And now let's work to improve our weaknesses and get those two strengths, because if we could, then we elevate ourselves and then we get there. That's the smart, not hard working, you know, trying to like chip away at something versus understanding what you're working.
So I'm loving the construction and architectural metaphor here, JR. Let's build on it. So we've got the construction metaphor as the person who's dug down deep, scoped out the foundations, built layer by layer, and added skills to their to their building to strengthen themselves. So let's think about the whole Olympic Park and all the buildings that are on it and its future. So we're thinking about the future now. And I'm going to ask each of you to reflect on the conversation we've had about skills, about those personal, the personal skills that we need to build on ourselves, and you know the economic climate, the sort of ability to take opportunities that where they are, or realising yourself that actually the trajectory that you want is something that's going to be less entrepreneurial, more stable, and supports an entrepreneurial style creative industry business. I'm going to ask you to think of a company or an example or a person who you think is doing good work, but also somewhere, and I'm not asking you to mention names of companies or individuals, but an example of something that you would like to put forward as an opportunity for where there could be better of support for those organisations that are bridging the gap, the grassroots organisations, for the emerging talent. And I know Philip mentioned young people, but I think emerging talent in the creative industries are those camera operators, producers, directors, like Lucy mentioned, who've had a strong 30-year career, but are having to seriously reflect on their future because of, you know, the very fragile ground that we find ourselves on at the moment. The next podcast that we're going to do is talking about a sustainable future. So the last thing I'd like you to say is one piece of advice to the next speakers, who are all going to be CEOs from East Bank Partners in the Olympic Park, about your advice of how to prepare for a sustainable future in East London, in the boroughs, and particularly for creative industries. So, good model example, bad model example, one piece of advice for the next podcast, and a sustainable future. So does anybody want to go first?
That's a lot.
It's a lot, Lucy.
I think, so a good example is, I know a New Direction run the STEP programme, which I think is good because it's an internship where diverse young people get to try out a variety of different roles in some of the big cultural and creative organisations that are moved into the park. And it's paid properly, and it's run properly, and they get those trainees or students to also work on projects collaboratively so that they really go through it. And I think that's really robust. I think something like that that prioritise non-degree educated young people would be like a dream, I think. But again, to the hard to reach point is, if you want to work with young people who are hard to reach, you need to put in more work. You need to engage with more organisations, like Salute, for instance, and it'll take longer and it'll take more resource. So you have to have genuine intention, because otherwise you will keep getting degree educated young people who are still in desperate need of work. That would be my good example. I don't think there's a bad example so much as what I know is that organisations like us who are doing really hard work, we're non-for-profits, purpose-driven businesses that are answering all these problems in the community and broadly funding a lot of that stuff ourselves, because it's why we started the business. I think that it's great to be aware that we're doing all these difficult tasks. It would be really nice if more larger organisations would recognise that and prioritise partnerships. And those partnerships don't necessarily need to be about money, although when we get video production work, we can employ young people directly, so it's pretty straightforward. It could be about space, it could be about learning, it could be about screening rooms or podcast rooms, it could be anything, but just recognising the value that we offer and bring and making it easy to work with those larger organisations would be really nice. I think a lot of the stuff that you see coming out from bigger institutions, it takes so much time to fill in the funding bids, or it takes so much time to follow the routes and turn up to the podcast, to the webinars, that you just look at it and you think, I just don't have time for that. And I know that sounds like I'm being lazy, but genuinely, if you want to work with a really rich ecosystem of purpose-driven businesses on the doorstep, there does need to be a genuine will and intention, some resource to make that happen. Otherwise, you'll just get what you always got. And I think it is genuinely useful if people put their money where their mouth is, personally. So I think that's what I would just like to see, a bit more of that. There's a lot of stuff going on here. There's a lot of video production work that we could do and generate paid work for young people. There's lots of outreach or community engagement where there's some money, and that could, or space, etc., or other things that you would need for collaboration that could go to Salute. And I think that's what I think people, my challenge to those CEOs. I think the sustainability, I think, is really focused on space. So one of the other big problems with the area coming up, which is amazing, is that space is now at a premium, and therefore loads of smaller creatives are being shoved out. The profile of the borough in Hackney has changed dramatically. It's no longer really perceived to be particularly deprived, which means that funding's a lot harder to get to, and a lot of the things that have lifted the borough out of deprivation, or areas of the borough out of deprivation, are to do with regeneration, and lots of new people moving in who have money, who are of a different age range and profile. So I believe there's lots of schools closing in Hackney, for instance, as well. And I'm aware that there's this kind of like shoving out of lots of small creative individuals. And so some of those routes are some of those doors are shutting for the local young creatives on the doorstep. And I don't see that the big creative agencies who may be struggling themselves are opening other doors. So I think that's the sustainability thing, is around prioritising space that is affordable. And I'm using finger quotes here because affordable is a very interesting word. If you are a painter or you are a videographer that's just starting out, or you're freelance, what is affordable to you? If you're a photographer or you want a darkroom, etc., what is affordable? Rarely have I ever seen any developers offer affordable space that was genuinely affordable to artists. So I think that's the sustainability piece. And I think if people can prioritise having some space that young people, specifically young creatives, can use, they will find so many exciting new emerging talent producing all manner of things, that of which some are bound to go on to be like huge, whether it's musicians or artists or videographers or handbag makers, whatever it is. If you provide some space and prioritise it and give people the opportunity to move into that space, it's inevitable that in East London, with the amount of talent we've got here, that you will find some really interesting businesses or individuals, or you just help someone get started on their way if that's their pathway. So that would be my last bit of advice.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you say, land development and land price is key. So I think, that's a really good thing to focus on.
One more thing to that point is that we may all get shoved out.
Yeah.
So as you rightly pointed out, we're all solving all these problems. We're all working really, really hard to try and bridge the gap. But where are we living? What rent are we paying? And how can we support young people? And if that's not valued, then you'll get this kind of really homogenised, hollow, non-creative community, non-diverse, non-creative community. And ironically, when they're always promoting the flats that are being sold around the area, the pictures are all of all the cultural and creative activities that are all in danger of being shoved out. So I think that's it's a fact of life.
Yeah.
But I think there needs to be some buffers to stop that happening.
Yeah, really good point, Lucy. So, JR, same question for you. Something that you can quote that's a best practice model, an opportunity that you think you're offering up to the East Bank partners or cultural institutions here in the Olympic Park, and sustainable future. What does that mean to you, and what thought would you like to pass on to episode 3?
To be fair, I think Lucy hit the nail on the head. I think we can't expect everybody to care. It's unrealistic. As I said before, like, people, they didn't sign up for this, right? They signed up to do what they signed up to do. They kind of got the qualification, apply for the job that they was passionate about. Some of these things are more like a byproduct of the cause that they're... But if they do care, just be intentional. And that's it. Just be intentional with their actions. And what that looks like is you might care, but you might not have the time or the resources in order to do it. So work with the organisations that specialise in that, like what Salute and Lucy's organisation does. Like, because together we can achieve and we can provide better opportunities. It's only going to benefit the community. It's only going to benefit the area. Everybody wins. And I think there's not enough cases where everybody's thinking about how do we all win together. Because if everyone wins, the saying money's the root of all evil. It's not. Poverty is, right? And so if everyone wins, I'm not saying that we're going to remove poverty altogether, but we can limit the impact of poverty. I grew up in hard poverty. I'm not going to say certain stuff that I had to witness and experience growing up, but it was difficult. It was really, really difficult. So when I'm meeting young people in there, you can't just tell them, forget a job and just go and start your business, even though that's what they really want to do, because they're thinking about keeping the lights on. They're thinking about their next meal. I've got young people that are carers. They're young carers. They're looking after their siblings. They provide for their parents because their parents are unable to work. This is real life. Versus, there was one young girl that was working with Salute. She's working with us for about 9 months. She left to then start off and launch her own organisation. But she learned so much within inside of that time of working with Salute. She, like I said, another one, flown past Salute. She's doing incredibly well, but also through the support and help through social work, she's been able to go off and create. She's provided and created jobs for young people inside of her organisation. She's only like maybe 19 at this point. She's done.
That's amazing.
Incredible. But why is it always down to us to provide these types of opportunities when there's organisations, there's West Down Football Club right on your doorstep that could have opened the door for her 1 million times over and it wouldn't have made a dent in their profits. So I think being intentional, if you truly care, just be intentional with and work with the organisations that specialise in these initiatives in providing opportunities for young people. I think what social work does is amazing. It's incredible. We are where we are, a big part because of I've been on social work programmes. Another organisation that we work really well with is Ballymore Development Company. You get the sense I've been in, and I've met their board, the owners, and you really get that they care about arts and culture. They don't have the time to invest in arts and culture as they want to themselves, but that's why they work with Salute, to tick those boxes to make sure that even though that they've got construction sites happening all over, they know that if they work with an organisation like Salute, there's work. They can feel confident in the work that is taking place inside of their community and their area that they're working in. And ultimately, again, like I said, they understand it's a win-win. It's a win for them because now their areas are benefiting, we're benefiting by working with them, and the young people are benefiting by working with us. So it's like a full cycle. And then we've helped young people get into employment through Bally, so on the construction sites and so forth. So it works, it can work. I also, very quickly, get there's some grassroots organisations that have like a difficulty with corporate companies, like they don't want to work with corporate companies because they think that it's happening, it's going to happen. Gentrification is going to take place whether we like it or not. So get with it or get out, because it's going to take place. Versus we can keep throwing eggs at their buildings, or we can walk into their building and have an honest and open conversation about how do we work together in order to benefit more people outside, because you're going to win. They will have Section 106, right? So that they need to achieve. You're not achieving your Section 106, but guess what? We're doing that in abundance. So we work together, you win, we win, they win. We all win.
I knew you were going to get it back to construction. I just knew it. but really good points. I mean, one thing that's occurred to me as, you're all speaking and reflecting that maybe a piece of work that should be done is to map out all the CICs, social enterprises and small businesses that are supporting communities in this way. And that might be a directory or a database or something. But, you know, that's a ready to look at list of companies that, you know, companies could invest in or cherry pick if they want to support performance and music, if they want to support filmmakers. You know, that's
it
something
could be
that
anything,
could work.
you know, employment opportunities. So then you're directly going to the schools, going to the youth centres and like not put a poster or a newsletter or something on LinkedIn. No one checks, like those young people in those communities are not looking on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
A lot of them are not looking on Twitter. They don't, you know, so like go into these spaces that they're at and actively engage with them. Show them that you care. Because they believe that you don't care. They believe there's a massive disconnect. So they don't feel like I grew up in East London. I never thought in a million years I could walk into Canary Wharf. And now that I can go into Canary Wharf, level 39, and people are doing salutes and it's, hey, JR, like, what? Blows my mind. But there's young people outside that still don't believe that they are welcome. But they really are. They're just not doing enough to make them know that they can come into those types of spaces. So that's it. Go directly to them and don't sit in your high seat.
So Lucy and I both run film festivals, and I'm sure that the same thing applies, that, you know, young people will email me advance and say, oh, do I have to wear a suit if I come to the film festival? And, you know, it's making things accessible. And we all know, I've worked in a broadcasting charity that supported underrepresented talent. Broadcasters need diverse workforce and employment, because if they're going to create content that people want to watch, they need people from different walks of life. Now, Philip, I haven't forgotten about you. I'm going to ask you those same three questions, and I promise you it's the last one of the podcast.
It's interesting because sitting here thinking, oh gosh, so many organizations, and I'm hearing Lucy, I'm thinking, do they really tick the boxes as well as I would? But I would touch on the sustainability. I'll come back to the organization.
Yeah.
I think you just underscored exactly what I was thinking here, that there needs to be a much more comprehensive, available database of community organizations that people can tap into. And I'm saying this because, yes, I'm an agency, I'm a business, but then I sort of support a lot in the community. I give my time in mentoring. I'm in schools and universities and colleges, sort of mentoring people about career aspiration, career path. I talked about just having a shoot at the moment, a film in Folkestone. Now, if I had known Lucy,
I'm right here.
That's what I'm saying, because that's the thing. I put a call out,
Yeah.
you know, for actors and things like that. And I'm sitting in this room, I'm thinking, hang on a second. This is why I'm in this community. I'm here to partner with local businesses. But then when the project came up, what I do, I put on, was it Monday or whatever, the talents are here. And it's because my challenge is we are not visible enough. We're doing great stuff in our communities, but nobody knows about us. So I agree. I think this should be a project that should be an outcome of this. How do we create this platform that really showcases all the community organizations? So when people are searching for partners to do projects with, we can quickly call on, you know, local businesses and collaborate with. So I think that's for me when that sort of came to me in terms of how do we build a sustainable future from there? Because if we're not together as community organizations and we're not shouting out loud enough in one voice, now if I, as a small agency based in the town hall, can't locate JR and Lucy, how's BBC, Sadler's Wells, UCL? It's that their search field is probably higher and wider than mine. Mine should be much more local and close. So I think that's where I'm trying. Then obviously with the organizations that are moving in, I think we all understand now that we all agree that we need inclusive workforces if we are going to be competitive as a business, as an organization, whatever. It's like you said, TV houses are producing content that are now speaking to diverse audiences. So who's helping you create these content? Who's checking in to say, actually, you can't do this. Little nuances that speak to various communities in unique ways. Who's helping you feature those things in your production? And I think bringing the local community into your organization is the best way to get these natural things done without it feeling staged, that sort of stuff. And I think that for me is where I'm looking at in terms of how do we create a sustainable future for, and also I would say skills matching, because we are having a lot of organizations moving into these areas that the local community skills definitely will not match these organizations. So there's a barrier there, and that's where we also need to have a conversation around how we also preparing the community in terms of skills, equipping them to be able to take advantage of these new opportunities that are coming into the neighborhood. And so I think those are sort of, but an organization that comes to mind because I did some work with them, moving on up, Elba. Elba does fantastic work, helping young people, getting them into construction and all that sort of stuff. And I did some work for them for about a year.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Idris Elba then.
Yes, he's also doing an amazing work.
Yes.
There's a community organization called Elba, East London Business Alliance, and they also do a lot of mentor. It's interesting. They do work with West Ham, and they collaborate with West Ham and West Ham Foundation, I think it is, and all that. But like I said, it's important that
we should know this, and JR should know where to go.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So it's important that we create this environment where we are able to know who's doing what. Like I said, there's so many things going on grassroots. I'm part of the Newham Chamber of Commerce, and even still, we sometimes feel we've met. Yes.
Lucy, one more word, very quick.
To jump on that, I think it's a really good. It's a really, really good point.
Yeah.
If you didn't know we're here, how the BBC is supposed to know we're here? And I think some of the things I've seen that have been done successfully to do that, and I think there should be a will to do that here, is Social Enterprise UK, who are the Social Enterprise Membership Organisation. They run social procurement events, and they invite all sorts of buyers.
Yeah.
And they invite all sorts of social enterprises. And I think it would just be amazing if the Olympic Park, someone would just do that. And there's so many people within all the organisations across this park that may want to be buying services, understand what we're doing, investing in community outreach, and we just don't have the opportunity to meet them. Picking up the phone and phoning someone up saying, can I speak to your marketing manager, doesn't really work anymore. So who could help with that? If there's a will to be a good neighbour for all of these organisations within the park, but being a good neighbour involves putting in the effort and inviting people round and coming up with a reason as to why everyone should get together, and I'd love to see that.
That is an amazing way to finish off our discussion today. When Dr. Anne Preston comes back from leave, I'm going to give her objective skills matching and mapping exercise, increasing visibility and a social enterprise event for us to get to know our neighbours. I think that's beautiful. Now, last thing I will say is that there was a National Guardian newspaper article recently to say there's a possibility that the Olympics may come back to London in 2040. And I think we should tap ourselves on the back a little bit, because compared to Paris and other European cities, actually the sense of well-being and the difference that having the Olympic Park and a creative hub in East London has made to the lives of our social enterprises and the people who live here and students who come here has been amazing. So I think there is work to do in the future, but I think we're not doing too badly. And let's have this conversation again in 2040 and see how we think about sustainability and if we're still here. Thank you very much to our guests. Thank you very much to the support from UCL for making this project possible. Special thanks to our studio directors and editors, Robin Billingham, and most thanks to our guests. Lucy Ferguson from Mediarite, Philip Osei-Hwere from the Eagle Agency, and J.R. Josephs from Salute. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks.